So webinar started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session of DEMOFEST, Automate Where You Can, Elevate Where You Cannot with Chris White. My name is Jacob Begay. I'm with Consensus, and I'll be facilitating this session. DEMOFEST is hosted by Consensus. We are an intelligent demo automation software company that helps you scale pre-sales. Using Consensus, your sales engineering team builds a library of reusable interactive video demos that sales sends out on demand. Consensus automatically personalizes the experience and tracks engagement, bringing prospects to live demos better educated and ready to talk specifics. This reduces unqualified demos to near zero and can double your SE team's productivity. If you'd like to see an automated demo in action, click the link I'll post in the chat, or if you look on the left side of the sidebar on Hulu, you'll see Watch a Demo there as well. We want to remind everybody that the 2021 Sales Engineering Compensation and Workload Report will be released on May 26th. You can go ahead and register to get the report via the link on the left. And then we are recording this session. We'll be posting the links to the recordings in about 2 weeks in the Scaling Pre-Sales and Sales Engineering LinkedIn group. So we definitely encourage you to join the group, and I'll be sure to paste a link to the group in the chat window in a minute. We will have a Q&A at the end of the session, so be sure to drop your questions in the Q&A section in Whova as opposed to the chat. Now, I would like to introduce Chris White. He is the author of The 6 Habits of Highly Effective Sales Engineers and the founder of DemoDoctor.com, a sales training and consulting company that specializes in working with software companies and sales engineers. He has 15 years experience as a sales engineer leader, and sales enablement leader, and regularly speaks on podcasts, webinars, and conferences. I'll turn the time over to you now, Chris.
Thanks so much, Jacob, and welcome, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. I know you have lots of options, and there have been a lot of great speakers so far in the last couple of days. As Jacob said, I'm going to be talking about automation and automate where we can, but we need to elevate where we cannot. In fact, I don't know if you caught the session from Todd, the keynote session from Todd yesterday. He mentioned that there's over $290 million in venture capital that's flooding to the pre-sales specific space. And in fact, I recently interviewed Nancy Narden. She runs a platform called Smart Selling Tools. And I asked her how many CRM tools are actually out there. Do you believe she said 460? And by the way, she has cited over 1,100 automation tools in the sales tech space. Now, before I get into any of my material, I actually would like to get a better idea of who we have out in the audience. So I'm going to invite you just for a moment to tune in to menti.com, dial into menti.com. You can either use your phone and scan the QR code there, or you can bring up a browser and type in menti.com and enter the code 7665-6771. I'd love to get an idea for who's with us at the moment. And at quick glance, it looks like we've got at least a couple hundred with us. So hopefully we're going to test the outer limits of the Menti platform here. The first question is, what is your primary role? And not surprisingly, the pre-sales role is skyrocketing a little bit. So we have the vast majority in pre-sales. We do have some pre-sales management with us. And so far we have one salesperson. So a very special hello and welcome to our one salesperson. All right, we've hit at least 100, and I think that's a pretty good indication. So it's the vast majority of you are in pre-sales, which I would have expected, and I think that's fantastic. So let's go to the next question. The next question: how long have you been in the role? I'm very curious. Less than a year, 1 to 2 years, 2 to 5 years, 5 to 10, or 10 plus. All right, these are coming in rapidly too. The 10 plus jumped out ahead, but now the 2 to 5 are sort of leading the pack, and less than a year. So we've got quite a few folks who have been in the profession, at least 20% of you less than a year. Excellent. So that's a nice broad spectrum there. Fantastic. Next question. What do you hope to get out of today's session? I think I limited it to just one term. So go ahead, and if you tips make my job easier, I will try to make your job easier. Although I must say, and I'm going to cover this in a minute, this is not the easiest job in the world. We're going to talk about that. Ideas, insights, automation. So it's interesting. I'm going to talk a little bit about automation, but I'm going to talk about more about how we should be elevating. Insight, ideas, inspiration. Boy, I hope I inspire you folks today. Advice, knowledge, I'll share as much as I can. All right, fantastic. And by the way, thanks so much for engaging, folks. It always makes it a little bit more interesting. And this is an interesting one. What one word would you use to describe the pre-sale dynamic? Whoever wrote that one, thankless. That's so true. Strategic, flexible, advisor, intense, interpreter. I love that. Rock stars. We all want to be a rock star. Important. Good for you. Fun. Fantastic. Critical. I love this. By the way, Jacob, I'm going to share this with all these answers that we're getting are just fantastic. In fact, I'm going to post something on LinkedIn when we have all these results. I mean, these are just absolutely fantastic. Listener. All right, these are great. I think that takes us to the end of the questions. So, folks, as Jacob said, the topic for today is automate where you can and elevate where you cannot. Here's the reality. We are in a world of automation, and particularly in the sales role, there's automation everywhere. And I think a lot of people are worried sometimes that the more automation there is, and let's take Consensus for a good example, right? They automate demos. The more automation there is, the less our roles and responsibilities and jobs are needed. But I believe that just the opposite is true. The more things we automate, the more we need to elevate and focus on those things that simply can't be automated. And if you read the write-up for this, I said I'm going to cover 10 things that I believe can never be automated. Let's discuss those 10 things. Number one, we can measure activity and KPIs. And we've talked about, and in fact, there's a number of products in the market that not only measure sales metrics and activity and KPIs, but now pre-sales. We can't automate grit and tenacity. Some of you were just saying this can be a thankless job. It's a difficult job. So let's define these two words. Tenacious, not readily relinquishing a position, principle, or course of action. Determined. Let's define determination. Firmness of purpose and resolute. And how true is that for our role? We need to be focused on the purpose. We need to be resolute in our job and not readily relinquishing a position or a principle. We need to stay focused on the course of action. Let's be honest. This role is not easy. We are put in very difficult situations. We have expectations from sales, demands from customers, pressure from management, deadlines, commitment. And by the way, it's only gotten worse during the pandemic. I actually had a workshop first thing this morning, and some of the folks that were on the call had 2 demos to do today with 8 hours of back-to-back meetings. And here's the reality, folks. We're constantly in the spotlight. There simply is no place to hide. And the reality of our role, there will be setbacks and failures. I listed a few pre-sales bummer dudes. Now you may be asking yourself, what's a pre-sales bummer dude? You know, a bummer dude is one of those things where maybe you talk to a friend and he says, oh man, like my dog just passed away, and you're like, oh man, bummer dude. Well, there's a lot of bummer dudes in our role. The demo will crash. Zoom won't work, or Teams or Google Meet or whatever you happen to be using. You won't have enough time to prepare. You won't have enough time to deliver the demo. Certain people you're expecting won't show up. Or worse, people you weren't expecting will show up. There's no way around it. Here's the interesting and frankly good news as far as I'm concerned. This is what defines us. This career choice requires grit and resolve. It requires grace under pressure. I sincerely think it's what defines us in this role. I had an interview with a friend of mine, an SE leader in the UK, and he talked about what does it mean to be a true professional in this role, right? He talked about how Tiger Woods hits 1,000 balls a day, right? What are we doing to stay sharp? And I truly believe that this grit and resolve, it can't be measured. It's just who we are. It's in our fabric. That's number one. Number two, we can get creative with tools. In fact, some of you may be wondering, how is he making the screen do what it's doing? And if anybody wants to know, I'll be happy to share after the fact. Here's what we can't automate. We can't automate creativity. Let's define creativity. The use of the imagination or original ideas, especially in the production of an artistic work. There's 2 really important words here, folks. Imagination. We need to have and be imaginative when preparing for and delivering demonstrations and presentations. And I really and truly believe that our role is both an art and a science. It's artistic as well as it is technical, and if I can use, scientific. And if I may, anyone can give a demo, folks. Anyone can give a demo. Not necessarily a good demo, and I don't want to, demean, anything that we do. But I love this quote from Albert Einstein. Creativity is intelligence having fun. And we just saw that in the questionnaire, or the questions we were just answering. Somebody pointed out that this job is fun. Creativity is what makes this job fun. But here's the reality, folks. In a crowded, noisy market, being creative is what sets us apart. Us individually for our own personal brand, and us, our company, and us, our colleagues, and us, our product. So the question that I have for you, and the question I'd like you to consider and take away, is what are you doing to be different for yourselves, for your colleagues, and for your product and demonstrations? And here's the fact. This isn't easy, but I'm going to encourage you, fear not being different. It takes a little courage and some vision. And there's that word again, imagination. And by the way, collaboration. The best creativity happens when we're collaborating with others, whether it's our sales counterpart, our product teams, other pre-sales colleagues, sometimes even with our customers and even with our products. In fact, when I was preparing for this very session, I had to collaborate with the folks from Consensus. I collaborated with some of my other colleagues who spoke yesterday. It requires a team. So here's the message, folks. Let's get creative with our demos. The best product doesn't always win, but the best demo usually and often times does. Number 3, we can automate collaboration. There are all sorts of tools on the market enabling collaboration, from the very obvious like Slack and Salesforce and everything in between. What can't we automate? We can't automate building rapport. Let's define rapport: a close and harmonious relationship in which the people or groups concerned understand each other's feelings or ideas and communicate well. Again, let's focus on a couple of key terms: harmonious relationships. And we have a couple of very important relationships that we need to develop in order to be successful, and understanding each other and one another. And there's that word, feelings, not just ideas, feelings. Why does feelings come into play and emotions? Well, first, people make purchase decisions emotionally, and they justify logic. They justify with logic. Even though we're technical by nature, this is an emotionally charged role that we're in. And we need to learn how to effectively communicate with our colleagues. I'm going to emphasize the word team. Sales is a team sport, folks. And it's more important than ever before to be human in our jobs. People buy from people at the end of the day. And the more we have an effective and collaborative relationship with our sales counterparts, the more likely that our prospects and customers are compelled and attracted and want to work with us. Now, the reality is that the AE-SE relationship can be very challenging at times. Sometimes there's a bit of a wall between us. Why is that? From my experience, one of the fundamental reasons is because we are simply wired differently. Now, some of you may have seen me or heard me share some of what I'm about to share. This is a smaller version, but let's take a look at how the AE and SE tend to be different. Let's first consider what we're motivated to be. By the way, this is a general rule of thumb, not everybody. Let's consider sales, life of the party, center of attention, By the way, this is a very good thing. I want to work with a sales professional who can walk into a room and really own the room. What about us as pre-sales? Recognized for our expertise. Next, initial perception, particularly of other things and other people. Sales tend to be accepting and trusting. Not always, but tend to be. What about pre-sales? Tend to be a bit skeptical. Again, not always, but as a general rule of thumb. When asked a question, sales, they do what I call round up. They err on the side of favorable. What about us? When we respond to a question, we tend to answer with precision. We value precise answers. What do we fear most? Sales. What do they fear most, particularly in the context of a deal? Losing the deal, as they should. I want to work with sales professionals who are terrified of losing the deal and highly motivated to close a deal. What about us, pre-sales? We tend to fear most losing credibility. Look, the deal is important, but this is my reputation on the line. What do we hate hearing the other say? Sales, anything that sounds to them like it may kill or slow the deal. That's what they hear. That's what they hate hearing come from our mouths. What about us? Anything that sounds untrue. But let me remind you of the when asked a question, they just are rounding up. They're leaving room for interpretation and looking to us to provide that level of interpretation. What do we all tend to think? The sales folks, they have no idea how hard my job is. What about us? They have no idea how hard my job is. The reality, folks, is that these can be very difficult relationships. We need to work hard and prioritize the team. We need to prioritize our relationship with sales, especially now that we're all working online, we're all working from home. We need to be proactive in building these relationships. Number 4, we can automate surveys. We can automate the collection of data, the collection of information. We can't automate sincere curiosity. Let's define curiosity. A genuine desire to know or learn something free from pretense or deceit. Again, the 2 words that I'm going to focus on there are first, genuine. We need to genuinely be interested in the people, the prospects, and the customers that we're dealing with. And frankly, we need to engage with them first as individuals, other than or before we think of them as a prospect or a customer, and free from pretense and deceit. Our sincere goal should be to understand what they're trying to accomplish so that we can offer a solution that will be helpful to them. And why? Why is curiosity so important? The opposite is ego. The opposite is making assumptions. If we put ourselves first, focus on us, our product, our solution, our expertise, then the focus is on the wrong place. And we need to put ourselves second and focus on the customer and be sincerely curious and avoid making assumptions. Assumptions are one of the biggest barriers to success in this role. And I just love this phrase by Plato. Learning is by nature curiosity. This is the very nature of what we should be doing. How do we go about doing this? One of my favorite sayings: don't assume when you can know, so ask. We should sincerely be interested and always be in discovery mode. There's a lot of conversation around whether or not we should be doing discovery. Is discovery dead? There's a lot of talk about product-led or product-led, companies and product-led sales organizations. And I'm completely and totally comfortable with that. But here's my message. Discovery is always taking place, or should always be taking place, throughout the entirety, not only of the sales cycle, but after the sale, while we're trying to not only attain, but retain and maintain our customers. And how do we do this? We need to, quote, clear our cache. We need to put our agenda second and focus on the customers and the people that we're working with. Number 5, we can authenticate electronically. We cannot automate authenticity. Let's talk about what it means to be authentic. Representing one's true nature or beliefs, true to oneself or to the person identified. Again, let's focus on one of these key words, and that's beliefs. At the end of the day, we need to be ourselves. I encourage you, be yourself in the role. Your personality is what makes your demo unique. In fact, if any of you are familiar with my 6 habits, they all begin with the letter P. If I were to add, there's a few other habits that I might add that also begin with the letter P. One of them is personality. We need to bring our personality to the floor, to the table. And we need to own our demos and make it our own. I can't tell you how many SE pre-sales leaders I talk to who say, I just wish my team would take the demo stories and scripts that are created by the product team or by the demo engineer team and make them their own. And this is a true fact, folks. Make sure you believe the words you are saying. If you don't, nobody else will either. You have to truly believe in your product and the solutions and the value that it brings to your customers. If you don't, I encourage you to sit down with your team and make sure you understand the value and can articulate the value. One of my favorite concepts where this is concerned is the word motive. What are we motivated by? What are you motivated by? And why is this important? Motive is transparent. We all sell for a living. Our customers, though, don't buy for a living. Now, what does this mean? Well, first, it means that we all have commission breath. What does that mean? Everything that we say is tied to a commission, and customers know that. We need to work that much harder to demonstrate to our customers that they're the priority in the conversation. But we can't fake this. We have to sincerely be in this role to serve others. And if we take that approach and we sincerely believe it, that will come through very clearly. So I encourage you to really consider your motives and this notion that to sell is to serve. I think that's 5. We're on to number 6. We can leverage artificial intelligence. And in fact, Studies show that in the next decade, over 58 million roles will be, or tasks will be automated through artificial intelligence. Here's what we can't automate. We can't automate emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. I love this definition, and I want to pick it apart just for a minute. Let's look at the first part. Aware of, control, and express one's emotions. If that doesn't define our job and what we need to do to be successful, I don't know what is. There's so much power in self-awareness. And there are so many times when we need to control our emotions, whether it's nerves, excitement, fear, and we need to be able to effectively express ourselves under those conditions and handle interpersonal relationships judiciously. We need to know when to speak up and when to hold back. And our role is all about interpersonal relationships, whether it's with sales, our customers, product, our colleagues, and empathetically. We need to understand and empathize, particularly with our customers and prospects. Again, let's put the team first. We need to understand our role, do our part, and be a team player. Sometimes our role is to take the lead. Sometimes our role is to take a step back. Sometimes we need to be the smartest person in the room. Other times we need to let the client or customer know that they're the smartest person in the room. This is being self-aware and aware of the dynamics. None of us are right all the time. Teamwork means give and take. The more we're at peace with the fact that this is a team sport, the more successful we will be. I want to encourage you to practice self-awareness. Keep your emotions in check. Again, it really isn't about us. It's not about our product. It's not about our solution. It's about our customer. What are they trying to accomplish? What are their objectives? And by the way, there's professional objectives and business objectives and personal objectives. The more we can identify what would be a personal win for the people that we're working with, the more likely we are to build that relationship. Number 7, we can leverage machine learning. I'm sure there's probably some of you who are driving smart cars, and we have all sorts of machines that can learn on their own. What can't we automate? We can't automate learning from our mistakes. Spoiler alert, nobody's perfect. No platform is perfect. We are going to make mistakes in the field. Question is, when those things happen, which they will, how do we handle it? First and foremost, keep calm and carry on. How we handle problems and mistakes is more important than the mistake itself. In fact, I'll go even further. I believe that the way in which we handle a crash or a difficult situation can actually build the credibility and build the rapport necessary to close the deal, get the business. It certainly establishes our credibility. Every meeting and every demo and every deal is an opportunity to learn. I want to encourage all of you to consistently and frequently debrief with your sales counterparts. I mentioned this workshop that I was running this morning, and we talked about how much more difficult this is. In fact, one of my favorite parts of the role when I was out in the field was, and back when we were still boarding planes to travel to client sites, was the car ride back to the airport or the car ride back to the hotel and the debrief that took place in the car. Those days are gone now because everything's being done online and our meetings are back to back to back. We need to work that much harder to make time to debrief and learn from all of our wins and losses. And incidentally, what can we learn from a win? Maybe we could have sped up the process. Maybe there were positive buying signals sooner. Maybe there was an opportunity to expand the deal and we missed that. So I want to encourage all of you, if you don't have consistent debriefs with your sales counterparts, make it a point to build that into the schedule. Number 8, we can automate with video platforms. And of course, our hosts are certainly one of them, but we can't automate customer engagement. I want to encourage you to pay a great deal of attention to your online personal brand. Whether we like it or not, we are now defined by how we come across through the lens of a camera. Do not overlook this. And here's the reality, folks. Basics matter. Lighting, camera, audio, background, even attire. I'm still a little bit old school and I tend to wear a collar shirt every time I get on video, and I know, and I'm on the the top side, the high side of 50, so I understand that there's a younger generation that is a little more comfortable being casual. I understand whatever your culture is and whatever the culture of the people you're dealing with is of course fine, but be cognizant of all these things. Your online presence makes a difference. And whenever you're presenting or demonstrating, which typically now is online, remember that everyone is distracted. If your demos aren't interactive, engaging, interesting, chances are your audience is not paying attention. One of my sort of expert tips is create as much visual interest and visual engagement as possible. As you've seen throughout the last half hour or so, I've had lots of moving parts in this presentation to keep you visually engaged and interested. And incidentally, don't be afraid to stop sharing from time to time so people can just look straight at you and then go back to the slides when appropriate. And here's the disruptive truth. It's very clear when we're doing discovery that we should get our customers talking more than us. Even when you're giving the demo, our customers should talk more than us. The more they talk, the more they're engaged. Incidentally, one other interesting little tip is if you're giving the demonstration and somebody asks a question and it's a pretty easy question to address and it's a simple click into, rather than click into it, give them keyboard, mouse and keyboard control and say, well, would you like to find out yourself? Here, take over and you can step into it yourself. Number 9, we automate with smart machines. We're all doing it. I've got all sorts of smart machines in my house. I'm sure you do as well. Here's what we can't automate. We can't automate pre-sales IQ and expertise. For most of us, particularly most of us who have been in this role for a number of years, it takes years to develop these skills. In recent years, this has changed, but you still have to do the work. Now, how has it changed? Well, there are ample opportunities to get engaged. And Todd yesterday in his opening statements mentioned a few of these. There's the Pre-Sales Collective, SE Nation, We the Sales Engineers, Sales Burrito Podcast, 2 pre-sales and a podcast. The list goes on and on. Incidentally, I'm doing a weekly LinkedIn Live show with various members of the pre-sales community and other people in the sales community, which I'd more than happily welcome you to attend. But at the end of the day, I want to encourage you to get involved and read. There are a lot of books in the space now. John Kerr, Mastering Technical Sales. He just recently published a book for SE managers. Peter Cohen, The Great Demo, is a classic. Brian Geary, How to Demonstrate Software to Win. Robert Reifstall, Rob Falcone. And incidentally, in case you're not aware, there's a book hanging up over my shoulder here called The 6 Habits of Highly Effective Sales Engineers. That's also available on Amazon. And if you go to my website, you can actually get a free download of the first chapter. At the end of the day, let's get involved, folks. There are so many opportunities to learn and get engaged. Last but not least, number 10. We can automate demos, and our hosts are arguably the league, the clubhouse leader or the league leader in that particular space. But we can't automate getting the technical win. And I understand this term technical win is a little bit polarizing. Some people embrace, and some organizations embrace the notion of the technical win. For some organizations, they're more inclined to have other terminologies. Whatever your term is for getting the technical win and however you think of it, the bottom line is very simple. It's our job to attain and retain customers and help the team attain and retain customers and drive revenue. And how do we do that? We need to build trust, earn the respect of our prospects and customers. We need to understand their objectives, their priorities. What are they trying to accomplish? We need to project competency ourselves and demonstrate value. Folks, if there's nothing else that you hear from this brief session with me, hear this. Our job is not to demonstrate product. That is not what we do. We demonstrate value. And it's our job to get people excited. We should be excited about the solutions and outcomes and results that we can produce with our solutions. And our job is to get other people excited as well. And in closing, the final thought, we can automate in many, many ways. And I encourage you to automate where you can, but we need to elevate where we cannot. It makes those things that much more important. And for a quick list of those 10, grit and determination. And incidentally, I'm no longer out in the field. And by the way, if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, I'm quite certain I would be. I think it's the best job in the world. For those of you who are still out in the field, fighting the good fight, as I like to say, my hat's off to you. I have nothing but the utmost respect for you. Creativity, building rapport with our sales colleagues, our pre-sales colleagues, our prospects and customers. Develop and demonstrate sincere curiosity and be authentic in your role, in your communications. Work on your emotional intelligence, managing your emotions and being aware of the dynamics. Constantly and continuously learn from your mistakes, and treat every engagement as an opportunity to learn. Elevate your personal brand online and develop the skills of customer engagement through the lens of a camera. Build your pre-sales IQ. There are ample opportunities to do that. If we do these things, then we can reasonably expect to get the technical win on the regular. And with that, I will open the floor to questions. Jacob, are you there, my friend?
Yep, I'm here. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Chris. So we have one of the most asked questions, obviously, is they want to know what tools you're using to do the presentation.
I had a feeling that might come up. The name of the tool is Prezi, Prezi. And there's actually an interesting lesson to be learned here, Jacob. Folks, I sat through many of the sessions yesterday, and honestly, I was disappointed for both the people that were speaking and the audience, because the platform that was being used didn't allow the video to come through with the screen share. And I literally reached out to some of the folks at Consensus, and I was asking what was going on and would it be an option. And when I discovered that it wasn't an option, I just did a little bit of research online and found this tool. And very transparently with you, and I shared this with Jacob, at about noon yesterday, I revamped my entire slide presentation using this platform because I knew it would be more engaging. And I knew it would be a better experience for whom? You, the listener, you, the audience. Hopefully you recognize that I'm practicing a lot of what I was just preaching.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, it was wonderful. One of the other questions that we had are, what are some tips that you have for building a better sales and pre-sales relationship?
Yeah. So whoever asked that question, thank you. And that question might have come through from multiple people. And I would say that this is the question that I hear most often. Frankly, some of what I've shared, but it really starts with prioritizing the customer in all cases and putting our agenda second. And we need to be proactive. I mentioned that all the habits begin with the letter P. If I were to add a few habits, one would be personal, make it personal. Another habit would be proactive. Even though many of us think of ourselves in more of a subservient role, we need to be proactive and take the initiative to reach out to our sales counterparts and sit down and have a conversation. Set expectations, and then hold one another accountable. And by the way, we can't set those expectations in the heat of battle, in the heat of the moment. We need to sit down when the pressure isn't on and lay out a plan, lay out a process. These are my expectations. What are yours? How can I best collaborate and work with you? And then the debrief. I can't emphasize that enough. After every meeting, and I always start with, what could I have done differently? What worked and what didn't? So those are just a few thoughts that I have, Jacob. I could have spent the entire 45 minutes just talking about, just addressing that one challenge in question, but those are some of the thoughts that come to mind.
Agree. Awesome. And just in kind of in line with that a little bit as well, one last question. How do you introduce the concept of debriefing, post-demo debriefing to a sales team that's not currently been doing those?
Yeah, no, I'm glad. I'm glad some. In fact, it's funny. I literally had that question this morning in the workshop that I ran, and again, I would take the next demo or sales engagement that you have. I would reach out to the salesperson you're talking to, and rather than say this is something we need to start doing all the time, let's just start with once, right? Hey, can we just have a quick debrief? And I have a little model. There's a couple models that I have, but one model is what I call continue, stop, start. What should I continue doing because it's working? What should I stop doing because it's not working? And what should I start doing that I'm not already doing? And if we can both be open to that exchange, then I think sales will become very open to it. And here's the truth, folks. Sales desperately wants to believe that we are emotionally engaged. They want to believe that we care about the deal as much as they care about the deal. And they fundamentally tend to think we're not. So I think anything that we can do to show them and demonstrate to them, we sincerely care about this and we sincerely want to be better. And by the way, we have a few observations of our own that we'd like to share as well. I think that's when we can begin to build that relationship. This is cyclical. It doesn't just happen overnight. So again, Jacob, hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we just want to thank you, Chris. What an insightful and very impactful session that you have. Super great content, and yeah, a lot of great feedback in the chat. If we could all do a round of applause, I'm sure that we would do that. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yes, as a last kind of reminder to everybody, I want to remind everybody of the upcoming sessions that we have. Dramatically increase interactions and virtual demos with Julie Hansen, discovery and demo strategies and tactics for highly transactional sales cycles with Peter Cohen, and then out of the blocks, getting pre-sales onboarding right by Clodagh Moriarty. Also, as a reminder, I want to remind everyone to join the Scaling Pre-Sales LinkedIn group with the link that I provided in the chat. And also, if you could please just take the quick feedback survey after this session, that would definitely help us out for future DemoFests that we have. And just again, want to say thanks to everyone for attending and see you all in a bit.